and it's preparing to live stream. I'm gonna copy. All right, we are live.
Yay.
That is our new YouTube URL in our chat. I'm going to take myself off video and I will start sharing that YouTube link out.
That sounds good. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Oh, I wonder if it keeps her in view anyway. I think it does because I changed it to gallery view. It's a learning lesson. But anyway, oh no, it doesn't in the stream. Okay, we're good. Anyway, so good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you're tuning in from. We're doing another edition of Nomad Office Hours. And today I have James and Nick from the team. Go to you next. So I was like, oh yeah, I need to say who I am. My name is Jackie Grenrod and I'm a developer advocate at HashiCorp. And I'm based in Toronto, where it is finally actually sunny today. It's been cloudy for 2 months. And I guess we'll just go to James next.
My name is James. I work on the Nomad ecosystem team as an engineer, and I am based out of Valencia in Spain. So it's getting pretty warm now.
Hi, everyone. My name's Nick. I'm an engineer on the core Nomad team. I primarily work in the client. Been doing a lot of networking and console connect stuff lately. I'm based out of Ohio in the US in the Cincinnati area. Being from the Midwest, I love talking about the weather, and it's been absolutely crazy. It's snowing in May, so weird stuff. But anyways, yeah.
We're missing a joke, Nick. Oh, Jackie can't unmute herself. I think I've unmuted you now.
Yes. Okay, so it turns out that setting was also a bad idea. I was like, what do you mean I can't unmute myself? I'm a host. Anyway, I just completely forgot what I was actually going to say next. So I guess a good place to start while we're waiting for people to come in and join and start submitting some questions would be, what kind of feature work have you been doing in the past and what are you working on now as the team?
Yeah, well, I'm pretty new. So pretty much my work has been exclusively based on the autoscaler, and will continue to be pretty much based on the autoscaler for the foreseeable future.
Yeah, like I mentioned, been doing a lot of work in the Nomad client. Specifically, last year we did a lot of really exciting work to integrate Console Connect, and this year we've got some fun stuff. Been working on integrating CNI more holistically within Nomad and exposing more network tunables and tweakables, just simple things like setting DNS servers and whatnot. So we've got a lot of exciting stuff in store.
That sounds really good and really cool. And I haven't done any feature work yet, but as you both know, I'll be embedding with the team for the next little bit and we'll see what I get to work on. And maybe next time I can be like, hey guys, I contributed to the code. It'll be awesome. But for now, I have not contributed anything to the Nomad code yet. So just checking chat and it looks like some people are moving over to the stream, which is good. I didn't actually get any questions pre-submitted when I checked. So I'm gonna go check that again really quick and see if there's anything else that's been asked.
Means everything's perfect.
Yes, everything is working as intended. That's the only answer that can come out of this. I don't see any questions, so that's okay. I guess we can just kind of have like a fun chat. We're all doing office hours for our first time, so it's kind of we'll go with the flow, see what happens, and see how it goes. And hopefully, I won't get stuck on mute again. But yeah, do you have anything that you're really excited about? Either, can I even ask this question that's coming up that we want to work on or we think is going to be really fun to do? Can I ask that, or is that going to be like a oops?
No, it's good actually. I you might like wonder if I'm actually on the Nomad team because I'll talk about Console Connect so much. It's just really exciting, all of the work we put into it and all of the work we've got in store. Just I know, Jackie, you're from like a healthcare background, right?
Yeah.
You're a DevOps friend in the healthcare from the healthcare world, and just the simplification that Console Connect brings to like that security story is really exciting to integrate into Nomad.
I completely I am so on for that because last year, maybe a year and a half ago, I think my entire team spent maybe 2 months, 1 to 2 months, having to really fine tune our network policies on pod to pod connections for Kubernetes. So I won't say Kubernetes again this live stream, but it was one of those things where we did that. And then I saw Console Connect and I was just like, where was this? I didn't have to like redeploy it every single time I changed it. And I do find that pretty exciting. I like gushed about that during my joining process. So
It's an area that's really tricky. Security, particularly TLS, anything kind of security related can often be fiddly. And the people I've talked to in the community are pretty stoked about the work in that area because easy, quick, free security, why not?
Exactly. And it's like you don't have to deploy it every single time. So our first question that we had come in, which is Michael, is does a Nomad autoscaler mean that I'll never have to think about scaling again?
I wish. Autoscaling is a tricky problem. It really is. So as much as you want to make autoscaling just happen in the background, there are some operator inputs that are required. There are some things we can do to minimize that. And so that's why you have different concepts of autoscaling. So we have the horizontal and the vertical. So the horizontal being the standard, let me add more or less. And then you've got the vertical, which actually kind of tune the parameters of the applications. And the vertical is where it kind of can minimize the need for operator input. But no, you have to think about it because you're going to have to run the application. But it should, we'll try and make it so that it at least lowers any burden of having to fine tune or think about what config parameters. Because coming up, when you deploy a new application, coming up with what config parameters are required to scale it is just like picking a random number. So if we can make that easier in the future, then that would be great.
I feel like that's how I onboarded to auto scaling. It was like, is the app up? Yes. How about now? Yes. Okay. What kind of triggers do we use for auto scaling?
So at the moment, we have a couple of APM integrations. So Prometheus is the most flexible one. And so you can basically scale off any metric or query that you have in Prometheus. So you can form a query that outputs a metric number. And you can use that metric number however you want. So it could be the number of open connections, the number of, I don't know, items in a work queue you have, the CPU, the memory, percentage usage are pretty popular. And so with the Prometheus integration, it can kind of be anything that you can get into Prometheus. It's pretty flexible.
Okay. Do we have any? Oh, I feel like I'm going to keep asking future questions and I'm going to keep being like, wait, can I ask this? But so I almost want to just
go for it.
Let's just pretend that I say that every time so I don't say it anymore. But with auto scaling, do we have any plans or thoughts around maybe being able to do like time-based triggers as well? So say you know that we're going to have a big traffic, let's say, I don't know, Black Friday. You're like, oh, I know I need to scale up at a certain time. Do we have any plans for stuff like that?
Yeah, so that's something that the ecosystem team have discussed for exactly that kind of scenario. So it's on the plan. No idea when we'll get around to that, but yeah, it's definitely on something we want to have.
The next question is a little bit related to the future site. It'd be great if we could share some Nomad roadmap information. That was surprisingly hard to say. Or exciting features or improvements that are in our pipeline.
Yeah, I can probably talk a little bit about that. We don't mean to be like secretive with the roadmap. We just try and not promise something at a certain date and then have priority change and then disappoint our lovely users. But I think the big theme is just improving a lot of the features that have gone into Nomad lately. There's a lot of work going into CSI still to improve that, and task dependencies that was released in 0.11. Yeah, networking, I mentioned that, supporting CNI, being able to operate with multiple networks, because right now Nomad's limited to just one default network on a host. And then just some other like operational improvements. We saw things like the Nomad monitor command that helps you sort of debug a cluster, other things like that to just sort of improve the operational story even more with Nomad, make it easier to debug, to back up and restore if there is a failure, things like that. That's as far as I know on the core side. I know our ecosystem team, James is a part of, is been growing quite fast in the last few months. So I imagine we'll have a lot of really interesting integrations popping up in the near future.
Yeah. So particularly, sounds drone on about autoscaler, but with that, we wanted to, with the tech preview, we wanted to be able to get that out kind of quick and early, at least to get that visible. But yeah, I think going forwards, not to spill anything, we're starting to work on a few different projects, some interesting ones, and so hopefully, yeah, it'll be interesting in the next 6 to 8 months.
Yeah, and bringing all of that into the UI as well, so it's even easier to use for our users.
So what does the Nomad monitor command do? Because I'm seeing lots of love for it. I haven't actually seen it yet because I haven't used Nomad yet. Well, that's not true. I did a webinar on it, but I haven't used it in the last couple of weeks and deep dived. Anyway, what does the command do? Sorry. Do you want to,
Nick?
Yeah, so the monitor command. So this sort of lets you, so when you run Nomad, it dumps a bunch of logs out to standard out. And the monitor command lets you from your workstation or a client workstation or something, be able to pick a Nomad agent and remotely attach to that log stream and view those logs in real time. But not only that, be able to, I believe you can change correct me if I'm wrong, Nomad friends, but I believe you can change the log level in real time too, and be able to stream all that to your workspace. And I see Michael Lange commenting that maybe that will come to the UI soon, which would be really exciting. But yeah, that's kind of a very high level overview. It's yeah.
okay. That helps. Now I'm like, okay, I was like, I'm going to make some guesses, but I'd rather just ask. The next question we had was that they're curious what the relationship between Console Connect and Envoy is.
Yeah, I can sort of answer that a little bit. Nomad Console sort of has these Console Connect APIs, and Envoy was the first proxy that they're integrating with. I know there are plans to make it such that other proxies like HA proxy, for example, can implement some of the feature sets there is a little bit of coupling between console and Envoy with Console Connect, just for some like deeper features like the layer 7 routing that exists in Envoy. Lets you split traffic in real time and be able to kind of manipulate the flow of traffic. I'm not sure where that community is heading. If the way that Envoy exposes those APIs might be implemented by other proxies or whatnot, but from from the intention standpoint, from the way that Console Connect sets up certificate authorities and whatnot, a lot of that is generic enough to where I know the team is working on another integration to add another proxy to that space. I hope that answers your question.
See, I'm checking chats in 2 places to
Yes.
filter through questions and try and see like what's coming in when. Another question we had in the YouTube chat was, is Nomad able to move workloads between data centers according to external metrics and information, such as network issues in data center A may require tasks more to data center B for performance issues?
Kind of the holy grail, right? So I believe Nomad Virtual Day, which is coming up at the end of the month, has a pretty exciting demo lined up from Eric, which probably will answer that. So the premise is it's around cloud bursting. So if you have on-prem and you have physical hardware, so that's hard to scale out. It takes an order of days, weeks to do that. And so the demo will kind of go through using the autoscaler and Nomads to solve this problem where you have physical hosts and you can't scale that much more. So then you can utilize a second provider, whether that's another data center that has spare capacity or a cloud provider. So I believe that's from Ricardo. So if they're still here, I definitely recommend tuning in and having a peek at that.
Perfect. And then another question that we got that I think is my favorite so far is, what would you consider the most underused or misunderstood feature in Nomad?
I think we both could answer that one. My opinion is dispatch jobs. Dispatch jobs are really awesome. Parameterized dispatch jobs. You essentially can set up like a job template where you define your job spec, your tasks and whatnot, and then you can define if that job takes certain metadata arguments that are required or optional, or a payload, like a small few kilobyte payload. And then you can use the CLI or the API and dispatch that job, which goes and creates an instance of it with those parameters and runs it as a batch job to completion. A concrete use case, I have a Nomad cluster at home that runs some random things at home for me. A few people I've showed have gotten a kick out of. I have there's a little Docker image that if you give it your Southwest airline check-in info, will go and check you in when it's time. So I turn that into a Nomad dispatch job where I just feed it my confirmation number and first and last name, and it goes and creates that job and runs it until completion. So just that's a very comical use case of that. We have users using it in much more serious instances, but it's a pretty powerful feature that I think is often overlooked in Nomad.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I've used dispatch in the past, and it's great for solving a number of problems. I love it, but not just trying to think of something else. Probably task dependencies. I know it's brand new, but I think that really changes a lot of things. I've done some pretty unpretty things in the past to get that kind of functionality, and this really kind of solves some really interesting problems around just running jobs and just kind of running that init or that sidecar that you need. So dispatch for me is one of the kind of the more bedded in features, but one of the new, but definitely task dependencies.
Okay, so I muted myself again. It turns out when I passed host, I got moved to participant. So really the only person that got muted was me with this feature, but okay, I'm now co-host, so I should not get stuck on mute anymore. My bad. Okay, we're good for the rest of the webinar. So let's see, now I'm catching up on chat because I just kind of was like, oh no, I'm muted.
Yeah, I can echo another, while you catch up, another feature is exec as the task driver. I know Talker, a very popular task driver. It's very easy to use. Exec is kind of like a very, very stripped down version of Docker, in that you can use like an artifact stanza or something and pull a tarball or something with your binary. And exec will just take that and run it in a shrouded environment with C group set up to constrain your resources and whatnot, just like Docker does. So it's kind of if you just have a binary, it's a very lightweight. I don't like to say the word container because I feel like that's very buzzwordy, but it is a lightweight way just to run your workload with all of those same isolation primitives.
For me, it can extend to all the drivers outside of Docker. I think Docker's been such a like, oh, everything must be in Docker, 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 Docker. Often some of those other drivers get overlooked, like the Java driver or the Chemu one. Like Nomad can be, you can even write your own one if you want. Nomad can be so flexible where whatever you have as an artifact, you can kind of get away with running it.
I just saw the question I was going to ask, and then I looked away, and then my brain was like, what question? Have we seen a lot of use cases with either practitioners or, well, yeah, practitioners that are using Nomad with Jenkins and kind of, yeah.
I've used Jenkins in the past with Nomad, so yeah. I've used it in the past I've never scheduled the Jenkins CI agents on Nomad. It's often been they're running as their own kind of EC2 instance. But I definitely used Jenkins in the past to orchestrate running Nomad jobs. So having a full CI/CD pipeline where you have your integration E code, and then it triggers down, and the final thing is a Nomad run. I do know people in the community that use Nomad to run their Jenkins server, their Jenkins agents, as well things like GitLab runners. I think that's pretty popular, and that's quite a nice flexible way to be able to use a kind of CI system on Nomad.
I've experimented with a few different types of CI setups, including Lambda, but not Nomad yet. It's on my to-do list. So
Lambda, that's an interesting one.
yeah, it was a few years ago. Yeah, I was trying to see if I could cut money on like doing Lambda versus VMs and what the threshold for that was going to be. So it was something like 180 jobs per day was at the point where Lambda would be more expensive. Just checking again, but while we're waiting for some other questions to come in, do you want to share any stories about what your hardest bug to squash or wrangle was? Oh no, maybe that's not the question for now.
I don't know about hardest. I don't know if this is necessarily a bug, but I did a lot of. I was part of a lot of the work to support external task drivers. So prior to Nomad 0.9, all of the task drivers of Nomad were sort of in the code base. If we wanted to support community drivers, they had to be in the Nomad project repo. So we chose to expose an external API to support remote task drivers. That turned out to be a lot hairier than I think we anticipated. I know some of our longtime Nomad users will agree that there was a bit of a gap there in releases where people are like, when's Nomad going to cut a new release? It's been a while now, and that was 0.9. So and a lot of the work was less about the feature of just supporting remote task drivers and more about the upgrade path. If you upgraded to 0.9 and you had to downgrade, since we're changing the protocol that task drivers talk to each other, we wanted to really support backwards compatibility. A lot of testing, a lot of time went into making sure that a code path that was not used or maybe only ever used once, and the only way we know it works is if no one said anything. Those are the kind of bugs that I find to be really hard. One, because it's not an awesome shining feature. In your feedback, your gratification is in not having a bug report opened about it, and also in just trying to think through every edge case that people might run into, and we didn't find all of them. There was 091 and 092 that included many bug fixes, but our community is awesome and helped us squash those.
I don't know if I have. Well, my background is a bit different. So my background's more ops and infrastructure, and so I think probably the biggest bug I've ever written or had to deal with was probably just my own code and stupidity. But I don't know. For me, previous to kind of working at HashiCorp, some of the interesting situations I had to deal with is trying to integrate an external system using the APIs that are available. And so that's always been an interesting one, trying to figure out, okay, what's the best way to do it? And I've often always got things wrong there. You'll use an API and then kind of look at Nomad, you think, well, I should be using that one. And so for me, in kind of the Nomad space, up until now, I'm sure I'm going to find some interesting ones as we move forward, but it's always been trying to write something that doesn't impact Nomad itself. Because if I write an external application which is hitting the Nomad API and is far too aggressive, then you're going to impact everything that's running on Nomad. And so that's something where I've been caught out before, and I'm trying to be very wary of now.
That makes sense. I relate to this. So another question we got was that the Nomad production setup guide suggests running Nomad agents with the lowest possible permissions, but exec driver requires running the agent with pseudo permissions. So what would be our recommended best practice for how to set that up?
Yeah, I would say, right now, you're right. If you want to use the exec driver, and a lot of the new networking features as well require root, we need to do some more investigating on, can we get Nomad to run as a non-root user just with additional capabilities or something like that on Linux. So if you want to use all of those features, I think you do have to run as root, unfortunately. But if you're in a situation where you're just using it to orchestrate some Docker containers, try and remove the, you probably don't have to run it as root at that point. And it's the best practice to run with as few privileges as you can. And if you can't, well.
That makes sense. You're unmuted, so I'm like, do you want to share anything? James?
No,
okay. I'm just
that kind of covers it. Like, there are compromises to make. So it's, yeah, it could be improved. Well, maybe it can't, but there are always things to research and look at. It is what it is at the moment. So yeah, sorry.
Yeah. Oops, called you out. Sorry.
I was like, oh, Nick's handled that question good.
I see Christian asking about Docker soft memory limits. We hear you. It is on the roadmap. Stay tuned.
And how about C groups version 2 support?
That's not as immediate on the roadmap. We do want to make some enhancements to the exec driver, and I think that will be part of it, but that's definitely not something coming in the immediate future, like Docker soft memory limits.
Okay. And then, let's see. Another question we got was, do we have any plans to have more plugin integrations like Python or PHP and similar within Nomad so that they don't always have to be packaged in Docker?
So I know Chris was at least hacking on a Python driver. We don't have any concrete plans for any of those at the moment, at least on the ecosystem side. I don't know about if Nick's aware of anything different. What I'd say, if you have a request for that, raise an issue against the repo. It can't hurt to get visibility on it, and it at least adds it to our kind of internal chatter. And then you never know what happens. I guess it's, if there's enough popularity around it, if you're kind of have the time to maybe even implement it yourself, we've got the plugin skeleton repo, which provides a pretty good base. I'll paste it into the YouTube chat in a moment, and that provides a pretty good starting point to get going with the custom driver.
Yeah, and to add to that too, the Java driver is sort of just a specialized version of the exec driver. And I imagine that's what most language specific features would be. It would be sort of some custom setup logic, custom fingerprinting to make sure a node has whatever runtimes it needs available, and then you're kind of delegating to the cores of what the exec driver does. So maybe take a look. If you're interested in seeing how it's all made, take a look at the Java driver as well.
Let's see. I have another one that's a Discuss forum question. I'm just opening it again because I only gave myself the link. But is there any way for us to run all of the jobs in a directory similar to how you can with Terraform or with Kubernetes? I lied, I said the word again.
I don't know of a way apart from doing a for loop over everything in the directory.
Yeah, I was gonna say, but that would be a really nice syntactic sugar to add to the CLI. So open an issue, and that's a good one for us to tag as like a, if someone wants to help out, that's a really good first issue type of feature.
Just trying to leave a note beside that to be like, it was a Discuss forum, so I think I'll probably just go open that issue and then link it back into Discuss after.
There you
go. Just gotta type quickly in this one. And then another question out of Discuss forums was, is it possible to do Nomad in place of Docker Compose? So they currently have a Docker Compose file that they've been using for development, and they'd like to use Nomad to horizontally scale the services. And they're wondering if they could switch to Nomad, would they need Docker Compose anymore, or would people just run sudo nomad agent-dev and develop with that locally, or something else?
Yeah, so I'll preface this with, I think this question got asked in our last office hours, and Michael Scherter, our team lead, answered it, and probably answered it way better than I will. So check that out if you want. Yeah, especially with I think there was the Docker Compose specification that was recently announced. There's some interesting parallels there to answer the question directly, yes, you can write your job files and you spin them up with Nomad agent-dev. That works, and we have internal users within Nomad or within HashiCorp that are developing services that do use that workflow. So I mean, it is one that will work. I think Docker Compose right now, from a new user perspective, is a little bit easier to get up and running. There's, other than the Docker daemon, there's not like a daemon you have to start up. You can just say Docker Compose, go run this stuff. I think it'd be interesting if Nomad could do that, run some job files ad hoc without necessarily a Nomad agent, just running them locally. That's not something we have today, but it is something we're thinking about, and we'll noodle on further.
Also added a note to leave an answer on that forum post after this episode so that we don't bring it up again next time. It's gonna be the recurring question. Okay. So another question we got in the chat was, for deploying jobs from a CI/CD pipeline, would we recommend running a command like Nomad job run or Terraform apply and then have the Nomad provider instead?
My preference in the past has been to use the Nomad run command and kind of have a separation of jobs so that Terraform manages kind of the base infrastructure. So like the actual cluster itself, and maybe if you've got ACLs, and then items that can change that are kind of more application specific, I've generally classed that as a different kind of story and use Nomad run. But I think it's whatever you prefer and whatever you find works better in your situation. It depends on the requirements. Maybe Terraform works really well because you get the built-in templating. I'm sure if you're thinking about using it, it might be something you already use to manage other infrastructure resources. So I'd say kind of a fence answer. It's up to you. I have my preference, but that might not suit your requirements or suit your needs. So, Nick, how do you do your homework?
That's probably not a good example for deploying your CI/CD pipeline to production, but yeah, I it's one of those things that either will work, and we're not going to prescribe one way over the other. I think if you as an organization is all in on Terraform, then having especially with Terraform Cloud now, having a workspace that's your Nomad jobs or something like that makes sense and could provide a lot of value. I don't personally have any experience with that, but I could see some advantages to that. Conversely, if you're more of an organization where developers are sort of managing their own applications, having them within their teams just Nomad run their stuff on demand or from the CI job is also an option. I guess the non-answer answer is just that both work well. Find what fits your infrastructure and your organization.
I just want to make a comment here because I saw Michael post that ECS plus CI is quite rough, and I would just like to plus one that. I once spent an entire quarter on writing an orchestrator for ECS like 4 years ago with my team, and it hurt. It really hurt. I'm not trying to say anything bad about Amazon or anyone else. I don't know what the experience is like right now, but it is pretty hard to kind of get those things fitting together and working very smoothly. And I guess James probably also has felt this ops pain where you're just kind of like, I want everything to be well architected, and I want it to fit really well, but sometimes you just don't see it until,
That's part of the ops job, right? Is making things that, well, unless you're using HashiCorp tools because they're kind of designed to work together, but part of the ops job is to make kind of two applications that were never designed to work together. And so, yeah, it can be fun.
Gluing the pieces together, making the big puzzle picture.
Yeah.
Oh, there was something I wanted to ask to dig into, and I got distracted by that comment, and now I'm like, oh no, what was it?
Sorry.
It's okay. It was a good comment. I just, it's not coming back to me. It's going to come back after the stream, because of course it will. That's okay. I'm trying to see if there's any questions we missed, because there's been like more comments and it's been a little bit harder to follow, and I'm trying to stay on top of it, but.
Yeah, I saw some questions about exec driver in Windows. There's currently no immediate plans. It's something that we do want to look at. In the meantime, I'm going to post a link to a really awesome open source project. It's called Daemon. And it's basically you can use a Windows raw exec job, and this daemon binary is sort of your PID one, as you will, of your job, and it will take the Nomad resources that you've defined and apply the Windows what are they called in Windows? The name is escaping me. Their CPU and memory restraining primitives to that workload. So no, it's not coming. Here's an awesome community-based workaround, but it's something that we do want to look into in the future. Just probably won't see it in the next release or two.
So I think we've covered this question a few times in different, I don't know if it was internal or not, so I'm going to ask it again anyway, just in case it wasn't during an office hours or something public. But a little while ago in the chat, I saw a question about what our plans are for hitting that 1.0 mark. I guess, do we want to talk a little bit about what 1.0 means to us as a company or as Nomad, and what we'd like to see before we get there?
Yeah, I think 1.0, is for HashiCorp as a company, is a lot more than just like an API constraint. We sort of want to feel like we understand the problem space that the product is trying to solve well enough to have a set of features that solves that and is both production ready in the sense of those features, and also in like the understanding as an organization of what those features are doing. So it's a much bigger deal to us than just we're cementing in what the API looks like. It's much more of a philosophical number, I guess. But I mean, to get to the question, I guess we want to reach 1.0 soon. That's what we're working towards as a team. And I don't know, James, do you have anything to add?
No, I think you cover it right. I've just been going through some of the documentation on the 1.0, and I don't know, I think I've been here 4 months, and I even looked through the documentation. And I was going, wow, that's pretty cool. And I think kind of getting to the 1.0 will make Nomad will make it very well featured. I think I'm still surprised when I see like the major releases, what's coming in. 11 was pretty awesome, and even 12 comes to it. So I think 1.0 would be pretty cool. I think people will enjoy it. But it is, as Nick, as you alluded to, for kind of a HashiCorp as a company, it kind of indicates something more serious than just a number. And so it's going to be interesting. I'm really looking forward to be a part of working on that, and hopefully helping out and not having too many bugs.
So speaking of how you recently joined, I'm going to put you a little bit on the spot. Alexandra mentioned to me that you've been a core contributor and recognized as being one for the last 2 years. What was that switch in perspectives like, coming from being a contributor to being internal and working on the team?
Once I got over kind of all like the adrenaline, excitement, the scaredness of like the first week of, I don't know, being in part of the community for so long, kind of getting internal was initially like, whoa, my God, like that kind of imposter syndrome. But it's been really interesting to get a view of obviously things you don't necessarily see from the community side. So even things as simple as the office hours that we do internally every day. You don't get to see the kind of the level and maybe the amount of people that may be involved in discussing a single issue that's been raised or a single bug. You know, you can have team members from 5 or 6 kind of different backgrounds, and that's really kind of interesting and different to see, and isn't something that maybe you realize as an outside contributor. Also, just how kind of nice and clever everyone is. That's always great to kind of go and work somewhere, and that meets up to the expectations, right? You see people give a talk, or you meet them at a conference, and they're like, oh, they seem pretty cool. They seem really to know what they're doing, and kind of coming in, it's exactly like that, just even times a few more degrees. It's pretty cool.
I joined, I think, just before you, barely, and so much of what you said really reflected my experience coming in too. I openly joked in interviews that my cover letter was more like a love letter. Like, I've been a practitioner for years, and it's really scary coming in and seeing all these people where you're like, oh, I was too scared to fork this repository to fix a problem 2 years ago, and now I'm here. And it's been so nice that everyone has just been so welcoming. And you're right, like, everybody is so clever and smart, and I just keep getting blown away day by day, just everything that we do, and it's really cool.
Yeah. Yeah, it is, and now we can gush about it in public forums. It's brilliant.
Yeah. Okay, I'll stop the gushing. But and I guess it's a little bit in the same vein, but not quite. Nick, you've been here a little bit longer than both of us. I'm not actually sure how long you've been here, so I'm making assumptions.
Yeah, I've been here a little over 2 years.
Okay, so a lot longer. How have you? Oops, sorry.
No, I was just gonna say, yeah, it seems to be very old by HashiCorp standards, but it still feels like I just joined, yesterday.
How has it felt kind of watching the company grow so much, and how's that, I guess, translated to your work as a developer here?
It's been really exciting. HashiCorp sort of embraces this remote culture really well, and there's a lot of, when I first joined, that was a little bit of the concern, is this company is going from, like when I joined, there's about 200 employees, and today we're around 1,000 or so. And with that growth curve, how is that communication going to scale, especially where you can't, go to the desk next to you and talk to someone. But it's been really amazing to see the thought that goes into all of the internal processes, and that leads to, I think, a better community experience. And I think also it sort of trains us in a way to better communicate with the community, or since that is also a remote relationship as well. But yeah.
I wasn't going to ask this. It feels a little meta to ask on this call, but you kind of went in that direction a little. What kind of things do you think that we could do better to be engaging our community, or bringing them in and giving them that space, I guess?
Yeah. I think we really focus on trying to ship bug fixes and ship features to community members as quick as we can. But I think if we could be a little bit, find time, I guess, is the biggest problem. Find time to be more transparent. It's not that we're not wanting to be transparent, being able to have more communication. It's trying to find the balance between, shipping features, building building things, fixing bugs, and communicating. But I think that's something that's very important that we need to, and we have been, building time, and we've changed our processes a little bit to dedicate time to community triaging and whatnot. And we have an internal RFC process as well, where we sort of design features in a long written form. And I think we should play with finding ways to get some feedback on those design elements from the community, since they are the ones that are using these features out in the wild. So those are sort of two things. Always, it's probably going to always be a problem where we don't have enough communication. I think that's just the nature of open source software development. But just being more cognizant of that. And when we do have, I think HashiCorp as a company is really good at recognizing that. And when we have a very passionate user that's hit a bug or is having a bad time, it's always, we always try and, how can we make that better? Very understanding. A lot of empathy goes into software development.
Yeah, and I think, as you pointed out, the discussions around the internal processes from my limited experience seem to just be kind of ongoing. It's kind of continual improvement, because it's very hard to find a balance. My work in open source outside of this has been tiny compared to the HashiCorp kind of size that it has to deal with, but it's hard to find the right balance between getting on with the core kind of code work that you have to focus on and making sure that you satisfy kind of community commitments, such as triaging, responding to messages in kind of online forums, and it's a balancing act. But there's always room to improve. And to people in the community, it's having been outside and now in, kind of going back to the coming inside, like a single issue can create like a whole 30-minute discussion every day around it. And so even if just kind of one person responds to that, it might be surprising kind of what's happened in the background, who's been involved. So yeah.
I also was just looking up at our events coming up and noticed you're both going to be in the upcoming virtual day. So it's pretty exciting.
Yeah, and it should be a really exciting event. It's our first sort of really big digital event, outside of these virtual days that we've been doing. So please register and please come. It's going to be something spectacular.
So we've got a few minutes left, so I'm going to try and get one more question in and then start wrapping things up a little bit. But it looks like the last question is, do we have any plans on managed Nomad clusters like the console service on Azure? Azure?
Stay tuned is about all I'll say.
That's a fair answer. Then maybe we can do one more. Is there anything that we can share about our RFC process and what that looks like to inspire others?
Yeah, I think it'd be really interesting if we could blog about, our RFC process more. We have a lot of really cool, I find unique internal processes like that. That would be really exciting. As far as sharing the RFC documents directly, there are reasons we don't. Having them internal sort of gives us the freedom to talk about customer issues, and there are private details that end up in RFC sometimes. So it lets us sort of discuss those in a way where we don't have to worry about disclosing things like that. But yeah, I think going forward it would be nice to share them in some fashion. Like I said, being able to include the community in that design would be, I think, would be a really big win for everyone involved. We just need to figure out what that looks like.
Yeah, I think that'd be really neat if we had features that we wanted to do, and maybe we'd be able to get that insight from some of our practitioners that we don't always get access to because we're pretty behind the scenes. I think that'd be pretty neat down the road, but it looks like Michael might have shared that internally. I'm not sure if that's the one he was referring to. But yeah. So I guess there's 4 minutes left. I'm trying to think of what we can fit in 4 minutes because it feels like too long to say goodbye and not long enough for some of the deeper questions.
This is your last chance, community. Any parting questions that you have? We we really appreciate how involved the community is with Nomad. I think that's probably one of the most gratifying things working at HashiCorp is just getting to work with so many passionate and friendly people inside and outside of HashiCorp. So thank you, community. You make Nomad rock.
For sure. And also don't be scared to raise issues or small PRs. I know certainly when I started out in open source, it was pretty daunting at first, and is something that takes time to get accustomed to, maybe. And so don't be scared to kind of raise an issue, or even if you find a typo or some documentation that's misworded, or have a go at fixing a bug if you're kind of new to that area. It may take us time to get to it, but we all have our list of things that we'll do, and there's no kind of bad thing. We'll try, if there's problems, we'll try and guide you through them. That's why we have code reviews, so that we can help point out areas that people might not be familiar with, and guide those fixes a bit easier. So yeah.
I'd like to plus one that I just picked that hill to die on in my last talk, is that I think empathetic documentation is really important, and we don't always have that lens that our users have. So if you're one of our practitioners watching this and you find something that maybe there's a gap in the documentation, or we've made assumptions about what you know about it that you don't know, or just anything like that, please, please, please raise that to us. We want this to be a good experience for you. It's basically my
Yeah, we love documentation PRs, even if it's just as simple as like, this was quoted wrong or something. Like those little things do go a long way to helping us. So no PR is too small.
All right. 2 minutes might be enough time. So I guess with that, thank you so much for coming on and doing the office hours with me. It's been really fun. Hopefully next time I can have some fun backgrounds and stuff to make it, I don't know, maybe not, who knows. Thanks for everyone that's come out and asked questions. Please make sure that if you have things for us, open the GitHub issues or talk to us in Discuss forums. If you're not sure that, if you're not getting replies enough or anything else like that, feel free to reach out to us. I actually have some Twitter filters to try and look for things like this and be able to help more. And I'm sure it's not that we're ignoring your question. We just, as it was mentioned, we might not always have the time, or we might not have the insight into it right away. With that said, we do have a couple more Nomad events coming up. On Friday, there's going to be a Nomad Under the Hood with Eric, and I don't have it open, so I don't actually know who else is on there. Yeah, it's not open. So we have that coming up. In the next episode of HashiCraft is also going to be Nomad focused. And in addition to that, we have the virtual cloud day for Nomad that both Nick and James will be coming back for. So yeah, stay tuned. Please keep coming around, keep sharing everything you had. And thank you so much for coming out today.
Cheers. See you, everyone.